Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom podcast. I've got David Lachmish here, and he is the co-founder of Ika. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to talk to you
Great.
today.
Yeah, let's go into it. So Ika, can you share more about what Ika is?
Sure. Maybe I can start more broadly. Myself and my co-founders, we started DWallet Labs, which is the development company behind Ika, almost 4 years ago. And the idea there is we wanted to solve. So we come from a background of cybersecurity, cryptography, deep tech, mostly Web 2, but we were on an individual capacity also very interested and involved in crypto. And when we wanted to professionally start doing crypto things, then we wanted to find a big problem to solve, something that requires like real infrastructure work, and not just finding a specific user problem and creating a specific user application. And in our view, blockchain in general and cryptocurrency is basically a segment of cybersecurity. And the reason is because blockchain allows you to do things with very rigorous security requirements, right? So it is, and it is built on cryptography. Cryptography, until crypto emerged into our life, most cryptographer either worked at university or worked in cybersecurity. That was kind of what people did. And so crypto took cryptography and a few other things, distributed computing, and created these systems with these very rigorous security guarantees. And so for us, I mean, this was kind of our world, and we wanted to find something meaningful and significant to contribute. And the big problem that we identified that was not solved was, we call it zero trust custody and zero trust interoperability. And what I mean by that is, if you look at crypto and crypto adoption, you can see that, first of all, the vast majority of crypto is held by centralized custodians, by third parties, right? Centralized exchanges or other custodians. And that is kind of antithetical to what crypto was supposed to solve, right? Crypto was supposed to remove third-party trust, and the end result is, the user experience is so difficult and so bad and it's so scary, I can lose everything. So people just want to have like a really serious third party to trust, which kind of defeats the purpose. So that's on the custody side. And then on the interoperability side, you have all these different networks that started to show up. And the moment you want to do things across multiple networks, you run into the same problems where you need to trust a bridge, you need to trust, and you're again trusting a third party. So we wanted to create zero trust custody and zero trust interoperability, and to do that in a way that still creates a great user experience and still allows mass adoption, and you don't have to sacrifice one or the other. And in order to do that, we had to do a lot of cryptography research. So that's why we started DWallet Labs. We had, along the years, we had a lot of cryptography researchers. Until today, cryptography research is the biggest team in the company. And we have people who came from academia, including, renowned professors like Professor Brokersky, who won the Gödel Prize. It's like the Nobel for cryptographers, and also people who came from intelligence organizations. And the goal was to really create some fundamental research that would be able to solve these problems for the first time. And so that is what we did. And the concept we were going for, trying to create, is a concept that we call a DWallet. And this is what Ika is. Ika is a network of DWallets. And what a DWallet means is it's a decentralized wallet. So when people think today about a wallet, they usually think about the user interface. I have this interface, it lives on my browser or in a hardware wallet, but it's kind of a thing that I use in order to interact with crypto. But what a wallet actually is, it's a signing mechanism, right? There's a key, and you can generate a signature with that key in order to cryptographically control assets. And that's the basic mechanism that you use in order to interact with a blockchain. And so what we created for the first time was this new type of signing mechanism. We call it a DWallet that is controlled by both a user and a decentralized network together. So there's this very unique cryptography, and I'm assuming we'll go into more details, but essentially for the first time you can now have this primitive, this building block that you can use that gives you both zero trust guarantees, because cryptographically a signature cannot be generated without the user, but also allows you to implement very sophisticated and robust access control policies, because the network is also required in order to sign, and you can enforce that on the network side. So it's decentralized. You don't trust a single entity. And even if all the entities are malicious or are hacked, they still can't do anything without the user. So you have this very unique, and we had to create new cryptography in order to enable this primitive. But once you have this primitive, now you can start building all these different applications that can give you both custody and interoperability in a way that is zero trust, but also you can implement any logic you want. So there you can have great user experience, and you don't rely on any single centralized entity. So that is, in a nutshell, what we've been doing for the past 4 years. We launched Ika a few months ago, Ika mainnet, and now we're working with developers like Lars that you had on the show in order for them to use this infrastructure and create this new wave of applications that can actually hold up the core values and core principles of crypto, but break out of this niche that can, operate these very, very complex and non-user friendly interfaces. So that's kind of the vision, and that's what we're building with Ika.
Great. A lot of follow-up questions. There's some on tokenomics. I'm going to throw a bunch at you, and you can kind of decide what you want to take. I can hopefully wrap it up with one specific question, but let's see. So the biggest thing I've been noodling on in my own world is all of the sort of disclosure recently about the Epstein-related financial networks and their connection to Bitcoin. We don't need to go into the networks at all, but just like the core question of whether Bitcoin was sort of co-opted by those organizations in order to make it defanged. Particularly speaking about the blockchain wars in like 2017, 2018, which was when I was just starting to get a handle on the decentralization. I love the fact that the decentralization was discussed, because it just feels like Web 3.0 is in a total state of corruption at the moment, just with like the just constant scams. Like one of my friends, he basically built this thing called Rent a Human, and then as soon as he launched it out, it was for agents to go rent a human. And so as soon as he launched it, he started getting hit with these crypto guys who are just like sending him money, and then when he doesn't accept the money, then they get mad at him, and like it's just this, and they try to break into his thing, and they're all doing it because they're like, we send you money, well you're not grateful. So then there's that stuff. There's tokenomics, whether there's a tokenomics and whether that sort of goes into this types of thing, like whether there is a tokenomics, whether the tokenomics kind of goes to that 2017 to 2026 wave of crypto, whether it's part of that. And I guess we can talk about the cryptographic stuff as well. So where do you want to begin if you want to lead?
I think maybe I can do it according to the order that you said. So first, I think the more like philosophical or let's say structural kind of questions. I think this is something that is it is true for any new technology, and I think I think a lot of things in crypto today are comparable to like the internet, like the .com era. And at the beginning of the internet, it was used for gambling and porn and scams and crime. Like that was the product market fit of the internet. And a lot of serious people in the world, very rightfully so, thought that the internet was a horrible, horrible thing that needs to, to go away, right? But then if you zoom out, right, and you look at the internet today, it's obvious, right? Obviously, the internet has made the world a better place. Like there is no question about that. But if you zoom out, even at the time, you could still get to the conclusion that the internet will make the world a better place because the internet allows for communication or an information to flow freely between people, and it can help things become more democratized, and it help more like this is something that if you have a let's call it practical, romantic, optimistic view of humanity and the world, right? Where, the world is a shitty place and a lot of shitty things will happen, but eventually, like, the human race wants to go towards a better place, right? Like, if that is your assumption of the world, then every type of infrastructure can be used for bad things and for good things. And eventually, if it allows for a fundamentally new thing that wasn't possible before and can make the world a better place, then it will make the world a better place, right? Like that's kind of the and it is a philosophical like point of view. And the same thing goes with we're also working on a lot of cryptography around privacy, right? Privacy as well, right? If you think about it, it's a basic human rights, but also it can be used in order to do a lot of harmful things. But at the end of the day, if you do believe that having these things in the world will make the world a better place, then you have to kind of accept that price. And I think the internet taught us, and in both kind of iterations of the internet, right? Like Web 1.0 had the same problems and then eventually became, oh, like this is actually good and this can help small businesses and this can help people be more informed. And then you had Web 2.0, which, you have all the problems that you have with social media and how it makes everything more, but still at the end of the day, it is better to have, free communication between people, and the problems in Web 2.0 can also maybe be solved with Web 3.0, right? Like all these things, you have to kind of believe that the world can become a better place with this technology, and it's worth the price that you're paying. So I do think that there are a lot of horrible things in crypto, both in the way that the market is structured and in the players that are using this for their illicit or I don't know, just things that you wouldn't approve of, maybe. But it is still, as a new thing in the world, is a net positive. It creates more freedom, and it allows for more liberty, and it allows you to be more resilient against tyranny, right? A lot of very, very important things that we should want for them to exist in the world. So yeah, that's kind of the philosophical, like, first question.
And it feels like that resilient part is a really key part of, because the Web 3.0, what does Web 3.0 promise? It's almost like the original vision of the Web 1.0, but it's with this sense of pure ability to live in that world of that scammy first part of the internet, which I agree with you. Like I think a lot of people might disagree that the internet actually is this thing that is great for everyone. But am an optimist. I am a techno optimist. I think this is going to be really important. Web 1.0, Web 3.0, essentially now we've got this connective tissue that allows us to live in this sort of like this world of both promise and the shadow side of humanity, which is Web 1.0, moving through Web 2.0, which I do believe that Web 2.0 is a sort of authoritarian's wet dream, but it's also breaking down at the moment. And then Web 3.0 kind of allows for all of this stuff, good and bad and everything in between, to take place on the internet with agents coming on. And the agents are going to be really interesting, particularly with what you said about the DWallets and the cryptographic stuff. And so with Web 3.0, we've got this now sort of like this network that's being established. It's really hard to get a hold on what is happening in Web 3.0. Let's go into the cryptographic stuff, because you're solving a specific problem, which I'm very, very familiar with, which is that the wallet is just like this weird thing. Are you guys gonna create like what in 2 to 3 years? What is the wallet gonna look like? Is it gonna be something that humans interact with, or is it going to be something that agents only interact with?
That's a really good question, and I don't think that the concept of a wallet as a wallet, right, like standalone, is something that is relevant or required. It's like if we go back to the internet comparison, right? when maybe I'm kind of revealing my age, but in my childhood, when I had to connect to the internet, I had to have like a pretty good understanding of like how communication works with my modem, and how and everything was very, very manual, and you had to really understand everything. But today, there's the Wi-Fi thing, and you have the password, and it's over, and you're just connected to the internet, and you don't have to know anything besides that. You don't have to create your own MIRC server, and you don't have to do those things. They just work out of the box, right? And I think there's going to be kind of the same level of abstracting this infrastructure, where the wallet functionality, which is interacting with the blockchain networks, will just be embedded in whatever you're doing, and will have this seamless interaction as an end user. And the agents, they don't care about the interface anyway, right? The agents they work directly with code. So they don't need like any abstractions on top of just generating a signature to the blockchain. For the agents, I think it's more about how do you as a user, how are you able to constrain them, right? And have these guardrails, which is something that you can do with DWallets, and you can create a policy for agents and things like that. But it won't be around the interface, because agents don't care about a user interface.
Okay, great, good. Let's talk about constraining agents, because it's something I'm day in and day out trying to figure out. The OpenClaw happened, and we hosted this event down here in Buenos Aires, and tons of people showed up to it because it was happening at the same time as the San Francisco OpenClaw event was happening, and everybody was posting on about it and everything. So there's tons of excitement, tons of hype. Anytime there's tons of excitement and hype, it's always like, oh, what's going on here? Like, is this real? Is this not real? And it's that cycle itself is speeding up. But to constrain our conversation, the OpenClaw comes out, and it's all of a sudden, it's like everybody's like, oh, let's get. I think it comes from this shadow part where it's like, how do we never have to do work ever again? How can I just turn this thing on and it just does it? And I'm sitting here trying to adapt to Claude Code as somebody who's non-technical for the past like 2 or 3 years, like knowing that this is going to be really important for me to build all these ideas I have, and and I got Claude Code and it's working, and I'm like, every time I trust it too much, it blows up in my face, not in like huge ways, and it's getting better and better and better, but just in ways that it's like, okay, well, I need to go redo that and rethink about that. And it's like, now we're talking about money, value. How do I actually like constrain this thing? And it's really interesting. I think that's why what I was really picking up with Lars's interview was just like, there's something here about access control. I love that you used that word, because access control is exactly what I was trying to figure out in my last employment, which was knowledge management for this organization. How do you figure out access control? It's such an important part. It's such a piece of jargon that no one outside of, cryptographic and software. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, so access control is a very, very basic cybersecurity concept. I would argue it's relevant to like almost every cybersecurity activity. And I think one of the big problems that crypto always had, its strength also created a very big issue. So the strength of crypto is it uses cryptography in order to create absolute ownership, right? Ownership that cannot be revoked. And so the way it does that is with public key cryptography. So with public key cryptography, you have a private key, and from that private key, you derive a public key. And then people can verify signatures that you generate with your private key against the public key, but no one else in the world can generate those signatures. So you have absolute mathematical ownership. And that's the core kind of the core thing that cryptography and crypto is built around. Actually, like in the Bitcoin white paper, Satoshi writes, you basically have all the problem of ownership solved with public key cryptography, right? But the only problem that isn't solved, which is the whole reason we have blockchains, is double spending, right? And because I can generate a signature to you and to someone else, and there's no way to know, that I did it twice, then you need a ledger. And then who manages the ledger? And if you trust a third party, then you're back to square one, right? So Satoshi said, like, ownership is solved with signatures, but you need a ledger that is decentralized in order to solve double spending, right? So this is the biggest problem, the most strongest guarantee that you have with crypto is ownership. and then you use this absolute ownership with keys and no one else can generate. But then what happens is if I have absolute authority with this private key, that means that if I lose it, right, or if someone steals it or anything like that, then I have zero. It's very binary, right? It's either 100% or zero, and there's no recourse. There's no there's no like, oh, I call the support and they recover. That's it. It's over, right? So with great power comes great responsibility, etc. But this very strong guarantee creates something that is practically unusable for most, right? Like for most people, for most companies in the world, this is unusable. So this is like a big problem that crypto like grappled with as an industry, and how to get to mass adoption and how to become the rails of the new world where people are used to like these things where you have access control. Every application in the world, right? You create a doc you create a note on your phone, you can share it with someone and they can have viewing, capabilities, but maybe not editing capabilities, or maybe they can just comment, right? Like you're used to access control baked into everything. And if you forget your password, then you can recover it. And if you don't have these like absolute kind of, I 100% own it and then I 0% own it. This is not a thing. So this is
how do you guys do that?
Problem.
How do you guys do that?
Sorry, go ahead.
How do you guys do that? How do you guys give the access control to the wallet?
So when we thought about it, we looked at the cryptography that did exist today, and this is, I mean, we're not the first people to try to tackle this problem, right? So the best tech that existed that was used in order to solve access control is something called MPC, multi-party computation. And with multi-party computation, what you do is instead of having one private key, right, a single like secret key that you use in order to generate signatures, you have secret shares. So you can think about it conceptually like
stock exchange? Like a stock exchange? Secret shares like a stock exchange?
Oh, no. Secret share like a share of the key. It's like you're breaking the key into multiple shares. It's called a cryptographic share, right? So it's that's the name that it's called, a secret share. And essentially, you can think about it like breaking. It's not exactly breaking the key, but you can think about it like breaking the key into multiple pieces. Oh, cool. And then let's say you broke it into 3 pieces, and 2 out of those 3 can generate a signature. Any 2, right? That's called T out of N MPC. So N is the number of shares and T is the threshold. And then T out of N can generate a valid signature. So what you have is you don't have one key, you have multiple shares. Those shares have a public key. So you can validate the signature against the public key, but only at the threshold can generate the signature. And then how do you enforce access control? You say something like, there's a very large, famous company called Fireblocks that does that. And what they say is, look, let's generate the key together. Like you're the client, I'm Fireblocks, right? I hold 1 share, you hold 1 share. Now, you have this access control policy. Sorry?
You're trusting Fireblocks. Everybody's trusting Fireblocks, right? That's
exactly, but they're not trusting Fireblocks the way they're trusting Coinbase, for example, right? Because with Coinbase holds the full key. If Coinbase are hacked, or if some employee gets access to that data, they can steal everything, right? Yeah. With Fireblocks, they hold half of the key. So what they're saying is you're trusting Fireblocks in order to enforce the access control policy, right? So you can do, your access control policy is, for example, I want a video call with certain people above a certain amount, or I want multiple people to approve, blah, blah, blah. I have all these access control policies, and I trust Fireblocks to enforce them, right?
Got it.
And then every employee in my company can hold the other share because they alone can't do anything. You're trusting Fireblocks so then whatever is held by employees in the company, right, is much less sensitive. Imagine you had a private key. You couldn't just give it to anyone in the company, right? Because then they can do whatever they want and people can steal it from them, right? So it becomes much less sensitive. And Fireblocks are also not fully trusted because even if they're hacked, they can't sign anything by themselves. They have to have the cooperation of someone in the company. So their attacks still exist, but they're much more complicated, right? You need to hack someone in the company and hack Fireblocks, and then you have both of the shares. So it becomes much less likely. And this is quite a good solution, right? But there are obvious drawbacks. So one drawback is, as you said, you do need to trust Fireblocks, right, to enforce the policy. They are, at the end of the day, a centralized company, a centralized entity, and it becomes, a single point of failure. That's a pretty obvious one. But also, besides that, Fireblocks is a for-profit company. It's closed source. They have their own thing. They have a product that they're offering, and their product is a custody product.
Yep.
And you can't use that as a developer, right? And now think about the AI economy, right? Like you can't use that as a composable building block in whatever it is you're building. You only can do the thing, the product that they expose because they have a business and that's what they're doing. And so you can use this for example, institutional custody, right? It's very expensive as well, Fireblocks, because there's a very high barrier of entry, right, in order to become a Fireblocks. So you can use it for institutional custody, but if you want to build a protocol that allows you to control assets on multiple chains and maybe leverage this asset against that asset, right? Something similar to what Lars is building. You can't just use Fireblocks to do that because that's not their product. So those are the two big drawbacks where this is not a composable building block and this is a centralized company that is a single point of failure. And the way that we solve that on the cryptography level is we created a new type of MPC protocol. And that MPC protocol, it's called 2PC MPC. And 2PC means a two-party computation, and MPC means multi-party computation. And what it is you have a two-party computation between a user and the Ika network, but the Ika network is a nested MPC between all of the operators of the Ika network. So in order for a signature to be generated, you need both the user, but also 2/3 of a very decentralized network. And then you can enforce any type of, and then you can also, first of all, you're enforcing the access control by a decentralized network, not by a single, entity. But also you can just use it as a composable building block because you can write whatever logic you want in a smart contract, and that will be enforced through the Ika network, signing or not signing. So now you can start building these interoperable protocols or custody protocols and use it in any way you want. It's completely permissionless. Anyone can build whatever they want. And you use that as a very, very basic primitive. So that's how we solved it. We had to achieve quite a few breakthroughs on the cryptography research itself in order to make that possible and to make it scalable and to make it, be able to support billions of agents doing, however operations they want a second. So there are a lot of work on the cryptography side and making the research, the actual protocol very robust. But at the end of the day, that was the problem that we were solving, and that's how we solved it.
So it feels like you're perfectly positioned to answer a question that's been coming up a bunch in my mind, and I'll lay it out so OpenAI 2 years ago had a board coup, which was such an interesting board coup because it was like such a interesting. I was working at a company that was working with OpenAI at this point, and it was like directly relevant and intimate to this company that I was working with, and it was so interesting. Like, what was going on? And then about a month ago, I came across this tweet, a really great tweet about the difference between applied versus research. And so research is this idea. OpenAI, Claude, or Anthropic both have a lot of research. And this research is really tied into safety. And so at OpenAI, that just went crazy because all of a sudden you have this guy who's really charismatic and, doing all sorts of stuff. And then it was like a fight between him, which is a board, and the board was all about research. And then so there's a board coup, and then Anthropic has applied versus research as well. And I just had a great convo with a friend today about in Anthropic, they are hiring philosophers. Not only philosophers, but they're hiring sociologists, they're hiring therapists, they're hiring anthropologists. All the humanities is coming back, and it's coming back at Claude, and it's all part of this research thing. And so the question I would love to ask you is, like, you've been doing cryptographic research, and now, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're also doing you already applied it. You're applying things. So this balance between applied versus research, what's your take there?
So I think one of the great things about crypto in general and like the promise of Web3 is also decentralized governance. And I think at the end of the day, when you launch an open source project like we've done with Ika, first of all, anyone can contribute, right? So it's not. I mean, right now we're the main contributors and maintainers, but anyone can contribute to Ika. And not only can anyone contribute, right? If, for example, most people so this is a permissionless network. You asked about a token, right? There's a token, you can stake it in order to become an operator of the network, and the majority, the 2/3 of operators, control the network. So even if we decide, oh, we don't agree, we think, as a team, this should be the direction, but 2/3 of the network, which control the tokens that are out there in the market, if they believe that there's a different direction, they control the network. We do not control the network, right? All we can do is propose code that we believe is good, but anyone can propose code. And at the end of the day, the network decides what is the code, what is the code that will be implemented. And I think this is a huge shift because all of the things that you just described, I mean, it's great that they're happening, but they could also happen out in the open.
Yeah.
It could happen in the open, and then whoever has a stake in this project, right, can just decide what is this project and what does it do and what it doesn't do. And law, code is law is something that I believe, especially with AI, is becoming more and more accessible for people, right? Because anyone can take whatever idea they have, whatever they want the outcome to be, and they can create code to support that outcome. You don't have to be like this super developer anymore in order to do that. So you can have an actual literal marketplace of ideas that are succinct and are actionable. And then you can have a system, a decentralized network with governance that actually enforces that, which I think is an amazing advancement to how humanity governs itself.
Yeah, I really like this because it's basic. Because the governance model we have right now is very old. It's a very old governance model, which is shareholders, and this is corporate governance, not political governance. Shareholders have a stake. They have voting rights, or they have economic rights. Not all the time both of those things go together. You've built this cryptographic access control, and it's a 2/3 majority, which is super interesting philosophically. Because I guess the parallel to that would be, I don't know enough to go into where I was about to go of like shareholder governance and
it's called supermajority. Supermajority.
Interesting. Yeah. And do you know how it works inside of corporations? Like how do they vote inside of corporations? What goes on there?
In corporations, it is actually more similar to political stuff because you have voting by shareholders, but then what they basically do is they choose the board, and the board chooses the executive. It's very representative, right? So you don't have like a shareholder vote on every single thing, right? Yeah. The shareholders, sometimes they can vote on specific big decisions, but they usually vote on who the board is, and the board votes on who the executives are, and then the executives do the day-to-day work, right? Like that's usually how it works. And I think this is one of the great things about making things like making governance decentralized and using crypto network blockchains as the fundamental structure is that you can implement code as law, and you can put these things that are, today they have to be done in a very representative way by choosing your representative in order to enforce whatever you want. You can make those happen in a way that is very I forgot the word, but it's like one-to-one. Like you can't make a mistake or you can't misinterpret it, right? Because it's code. And I think that another interesting thing that we're seeing now is things like prediction markets or decision markets, where people can very easily vote on specific outcomes, right? Which also, I think, some people think that it will replace governance altogether. They call it Futarchy. I don't think that will actually be the case, but I do think it will be an important part of governance. So you will have these decision markets and prediction markets, and people will be able to know what is the expected effect of specific decisions in order to help them make decisions.
Oh, it's like decision trees. I've been thinking a lot about decision trees within the context graphs and the graph databases in general related to ontologies. Hopefully I don't get too carried away with where I'm going. But knowledge graphs are related to ontologies. Ontologies are related to sort of decision trees, because I'm making a lot of decision trees with these coding agents. I'm making a lot of decisions. I'm also outsourcing a huge amount of decisions to it. Then there are the orchestration frameworks, which are even more decisions to this thing. Now, decision trees are really, or traces are really important because you can run those back up as long as it can reason about itself, which it can't, but it's getting there, and like make everything explicit, which anybody listening to this, please try to make as many things explicit as possible when you're trying to tell this, so you have these decision trees so you can kind of trace it back. And this is really important for not only the governance we've been talking about, for organizations, for republics and everything like that, is how did we come to this decision? What were the other decisions that we could have made? How do we get all the way here? And I love this idea that Futarchy with a prediction markets is like one aspect of that, right? It's like, okay, you get all these decisions, there's money on the line, but then there's also these other sort of insider trading, which I guess kind of runs into it because we now know it's insider trading rather than before, which was like insider trading where we didn't know about it. And then that's just one piece. That's just one piece of the giant transition that humanity is going through, which basically nobody understands the whole transition. I don't think we've ever really understood the transitions that we've been through before, but like at least they were a little bit more manageable. Now it's just like
it just took more time. So you had more time to. It's like the frog in the boiling water. It's now it suddenly became like really boiling really fast. Like you need to ease into it.
Yeah, but the agents can help us do that, right? So there's going to be a feedback loop because now the agents are making it easier for me to track the decisions, but I can't track all of them. I have to like specialize, but then it just totally throws the whole specialization thing in the window. Actually, I would love it. We can go here unless you wanted to say something about what we just talked about, but specialization as specialization as the only thing that anybody should do feels like it's a product of the industrial age, and we're headed into the information age. It might be my own personal cope because I'm not a specialist. But what do you think about generalism versus specialism in this world that we're entering?
So I think I would it's hard to do that because AI, I mean, let's say LLMs, right? To be like very concrete, right? LLMs have really created a very demonstrable impact in a very short time with things that 2-3 years ago would have seemed just
Magic.
Science fiction, right? So it's hard to do that. But if you zoom out a bit, right? Technology has always done this, right? It always took a specific type of work that had to be done manually and just made it much, much easier, like either completely automated or, 90% automated, whatever, right? Like this is what technology does. And it happened since since the agricultural, revolution all the way to today, right? And I think just when we see the new class of, let's say, software engineers, right, being so impacted, and I can give you examples from our company. You mentioned about being explicit, right? You can't get more explicit than a scientific cryptography research paper, right? Like this is the most explicit thing ever. And when a human being needs to implement cryptography into code, it is one of the most, like there are very few people in the world that can actually do that, right? And it takes them a long time. And then you give it to Claude, and it is able to do that. It's insane because it is very, very explicit. You don't get more explicit than that. So you have a protocol and it implements the protocol. And it's not like the most optimized, and there's still it'll get better, but it still is able to do something that would take a human being 6 months. It does it in 2 days, right? And it's not just any human being. It's like the smartest, most like specialized, most serious people who know how to, both math and computer science and can like this is a huge, and for us it was a big a game changer, honestly. We're faster than before, like orders of magnitude faster. And I think this is this kind of shift is, I guess, what people that worked at a factory felt like when factories started to become automated, right? It's like this is the same type of shift. So I don't think that this is new in quality, but it is just something that we didn't expect to happen, and it caught us by surprise, and it is affecting a lot of people, right? Maybe, I don't know if actually more than, previous waves of automation, but definitely different classes, like different types of people that we thought would be affected. And you can think about like the services industry and middle management and lawyers and accountants and like all these things that we always thought will just be there forever. And we now can very clearly see a near future without any of those people, right? So, or with a friction, like a fraction of the amount of people that were required in order to do those things. So I think humanity will reorganize itself around this, just like we did with every new piece of technology. And at the end of the day, technology helps increase the quality of living, not decrease it, right? Even if we'll have a transition period where there's going to be a lot of uncertainty and people will lose their jobs, and it will have but at the end of the day, it will increase productivity, so it will increase the quality of life. And we'll need to just rearrange humanity around these very very rapid changes, right? It's also faster than anything ever before. But I don't believe like this is inherently different than anything that we've experienced in the past.
Yeah, I love it. It reminds me of the book Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. I've had a few instances of future shock myself since the LLM showed up, and then I've seen it in other people as well. And I agree with you. It's not anything novel. I mean, it's novel in the sense that how scale and how quickly, but these are all things that technology does, like speed, efficiency, cheaper, better, faster, cheaper, right? It makes everything better, faster, cheaper. And I think that we are going to enter a world where everything is better, faster, and cheaper, which is so interesting given the last 15 to 20 years of inshitification. But everything I've seen so far, I'm building software better, faster, and cheaper. Not only that, I guess it is a little bit of a 0 to 1 situation, because I am now in a position where I can build software where I could not build software before. I guess I could have hired people to do it. So there is a little bit of a connectivity. But yeah, better, faster, cheaper. Technology is doing that. But that is a future shock. And I feel like Neil Stephenson, I think his book, The Diamond Age, really gets into this world that we're entering of like, we're going to create so many weird social technologies for getting into this world in a way we're all going to kind of become faux aristocrats, right? Like where we're going to be able to go do these things. Yeah, what do you think?
But this has already happened, right? Like if you look at your life today or my life today, we're aristocrats. Like compared to 400 years ago, we're more than aristocrats. Like their aristocrats had a shitty life if you compare it to our lives, right? Like this is always happening. What I'm saying is that this isn't new. It's just very fast, and it's affecting way more people at a time than what we experienced before. But it's not changing anything significant. And I think eventually the trend is always upwards. And if we are able to be more productive as a society, right, as a market, so we'll be able to produce more and to increase the quality of life of everyone. How do we make sure, or how do we solve the distribution of resources in this changing world? I don't know. It's a big problem. I think maybe crypto can be a big part of that, right? But these are problems that eventually will be solved, because you have to have like a society where if there's more prosperity, then it also trickles down, although I hate the word, but it does eventually trickle down to everyone. You have to have that in order to continue growth. So we'll find a way to do that, whether it's UBI, whether it's other ways, right? Whatever it is, there will be ways in order to facilitate that.
Yeah, I really like that, because it goes back to the Futarchy kind of like, it's just one piece. UBI might be one piece, but we'll develop new pieces to fit into that. I want to go back to the crypto because it's so interesting, and I love that we're in a down market now, because I love the down markets. The down markets are the most interesting times to think about where this technology really can lead. It really feels like the last year so interesting. I've been running an AI group down here for the past 2 years, and we've partnered with a crypto center down here, and I was introduced to the fact that Argentines run like 50% of the crypto companies, or part of the 50% of the developers, like all the people who building it. They were doing the same stuff that was going on in 2017 when I was in Silicon Valley. I had no idea. And it's one of the largest markets, and so Ethereum is setting up down here. And so we've been partnered with this crypto world, and so I've gotten back into it after a little bit of a disillusionment. And it really was really weird how all of a sudden DevConnect happened. And then just like a light went out. All of a sudden, everybody just stops talking about it, except for the Twitter accounts that were going crazy with all the stuff I had mentioned earlier. That's not good for the people's understanding of crypto. Do you think we are at a sea change of like Bitcoin, Ethereum? Well, actually, that's a good question for you. Does Ika represent a threat to Bitcoin or Ethereum?
So I don't think so. I think we are very, very, it's like trying to think how the internet would look today back at 1999, right? It's very hard to know, what will still be there in 10 or 20 years, right? I do think that you have some very fundamental things that crypto is useful for, and things that are basic infrastructure in crypto that are required. So obviously the concept of an immutable decentralized ledger, right? Like that's obviously, and Bitcoin embodies that, but also others, right? So I don't know if Bitcoin will be the one that wins. It has a lot of traction and brand recognition, but those things can also go away. I don't know.
Yep.
Then you have like the infrastructure for creating shared state, right? So like L1s, smart contract L1s, like Ethereum or Solana, and there are a lot of different ones. There's Sui, there's a bunch of different L1s, and each one has different approaches. I don't think this is a winner takes all, but it's also almost impossible to know, who will be the winners in 10 years or 20 years, right? But this is definitely a problem that needs to be solved. So it's either one of those players or another player that solves that problem, right? That will be there. And then you have problems around like the things that Ika is solving, right? Like let's call it secondary infrastructure, right? Like how do you solve custody? How do you solve interoperability? Because you won't have just one blockchain, right? And then how do you solve privacy, right? Blockchains are public and you need to solve privacy. So you can do that in a centralized way and relying on hardware, blah, blah, blah. Or you can use cryptography like zero knowledge proofs or FHE, fully homomorphic encryption. And so all of those things are things that will exist. Who will win? I don't know. It's impossible to know right now. Obviously, we're aiming to win our categories, right? And right now we have the most advanced cryptography and the best solutions, but we know that we need to keep working in order to, stay ahead of the curve, right? Because eventually, and you talked about the down market, right? Eventually the down market goes up again. And when it goes up, you want to be there to capture that activity. So you want to have the best, most scalable, cheapest, most secure, most decentralized solution out there. And you want to get as much traction as possible. So you start creating that moat that today Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana and all these networks have, that makes it harder for others to take their place, or at least gives them a better chance to still be there in 10 or 20 years. So I think this is kind of how we're thinking about it. There are major problems or major aspects that need to be solved. And if you're solving one of them, then you need to do it in the best way possible in order to get as much traction as possible to still be relevant as we move forward.
So let's go into the interoperability part, because we talked about the access control a lot, but it sounds like there's a whole other part where there's interoperability, and that is so important. And I've studied this a lot, not to the degree that you probably have, but what type of interoperability does Ika create?
So this goes back to the zero trust guarantees that you have with the blockchain, right? So when you operate on a blockchain, and this is actually a bit of a misconception that a lot of people have. So people think that because something is decentralized, it means that instead of trusting one centralized entity, you're actually trusting a lot of entities. But that's not true, because the way that blockchains are built, and this is actually in the name, a chain of blocks, is that you don't even trust the operators, right? You don't even trust validators or miners, because you have a chain of blocks that are cryptographically, you can verify them from Genesis, right? From the moment, and you can verify that there was no illegal transaction that was included in the state. So no one can cheat you, even if all of the validators of Ethereum or all of the Bitcoin miners, right, want to include an illegal transaction, right? So let's say they want to take all your Bitcoin and send it to themselves. So they sign they include a transaction that wasn't signed by you. you can verify the entire state from Genesis, go over every block is cryptographically connected, and verify every signature against the public key. So you have this structure where you actually don't have to trust anyone, right? The decentralization is just to remove the single point of failure, but you never have to trust anyone. It's zero trust. And that guarantee is very strong, but it also creates huge problems for interoperability. Because the moment you operate with two of those systems, now you need to trust someone to tell you what is the state of the other, right? So if you're operating right now on Ethereum and you want to do stuff from Ethereum to Bitcoin, you don't have that zero trust guarantee. So you have to trust someone to tell you, oh, this is the state, this is the correct state of Bitcoin, right? This is, and then you can do stuff with Bitcoin, but you have to trust them. So interoperability, by its nature, introduces this trusted third party into this trustless and zero trust environment. And the way that you can solve that with Ika, and for the first time, is a DWallet is a signing mechanism, right? It can control assets on any blockchain, but it is controlled by both the user and a decentralized network, which means you don't trust anyone to tell you the state. You're always required in order to sign transactions. So in the context that we gave before, right? Let's say you're on Ethereum and you want to do something on Bitcoin. You can actually control the DWallet that holds the Bitcoin and control the DWallet that holds Ethereum from the same place, where the user always has the final say from a cryptographic perspective, which means that you can do things like swap between native Bitcoin and native Ethereum, and you can make sure that the Ethereum doesn't go through if the Bitcoin doesn't go through in an atomic way, right? For example, but you can implement any logic that you want that requires multiple assets on multiple chains, and the user is still required to approve them, so you don't have to trust any third party.
Sounds like you're counterpositioned against Chainlink, because Chainlink feels like it's sort of like a nation state, centralized bank type of thing.
So Chainlink, yeah. I mean, Chainlink, just like any, and I'm talking specifically about the bridge component of Chainlink, right? Just like any other bridge. You have Wormhole, you have Layer 0, you have a bunch of different bridges that are supposed to connect between networks, but they in fact serve as the trusted third party that you need to trust, that tells you what's the, right? So what they do is they tell you, give me your Bitcoin, right? Not Bitcoin. Actually, most of them are not active on Bitcoin because they need to have smart contracts. But let's say Ethereum, right? Give me your Ethereum on Ethereum. I will hold it in an address that I control. And I will then issue a derivative, a wrapped asset on Solana, right? Wrapped Ethereum, and I will give it to you. And now people who, you don't actually do things with Ethereum, you do things with a wrapped Ethereum, and you trust them to keep the actual underlying Ethereum. So when you give them the wrapped Ethereum back, they'll actually give you your Ethereum back, right? But for example, there were a lot of hacks, like bridges are one of the most hacked things in crypto because it creates a honeypot. It creates a single failure.
Wow, interesting.
And one of the most interesting things with this zero trust dynamic is if you break Ethereum, right? Let's say you manage to take control over more than 50% of the network. It's almost impossible to do, but let's say you were able to do that, right? You found, let's say there's a bug in one of the implementations of Ethereum and you were able to take over validators. You can't really do any damage to anyone on Ethereum except if you're using centralized entities. So for example, if you off-ramp to a centralized exchange and then take out the money, then you can do damage. If you use a bridge, you can fake transactions and drain all of the assets that are held within bridges, because you can fake as if I returned wrapped Ethereum, now give me back the Ethereum, right? So the only thing you can actually steal, because all the other things are reversible in a blockchain. So you can, the moment you get back, you can say, okay, these things are just being reversed and I just don't recognize, right? You have the zero trust guarantees where you don't have to recognize illegal transactions. So the only things that are actually vulnerable when you hack a blockchain are the things that are connected to the things that remove the zero trust, like centralized exchanges, centralized custodians, or bridges. So with Ika, you solve that because you're actually controlling with cryptographic guarantees that nothing can be generated without the user, you're controlling a native address, a native account on Ethereum or on Solana or on Bitcoin.
Okay, that's brilliant. So the wallet is really interesting because it's approaching the wallet the way. Well, so let's go into the other wallet, which is I mean, there's a bunch of wallets right now. I can't even remember the name of it. MetaMask. MetaMask. All that programmatic stuff is all happening in the browser, right? So they're a very basic wallet. Based on that small insight into my head about what MetaMask is, I don't actually know that much about it. What's really going on with the current wallet economy?
So with MetaMask, you can think about it if you break down what they have, right? Yeah. So MetaMask has, first of all, it stores the private key, right? That's one thing. So first of all, you have the private key stored. Let's talk about the MetaMask extension, right? That's the easiest way to talk about it. So it's stored within your computer's physical memory, right? So that's one thing that they have. The second thing that they have is an interface for the user to be able to generate signatures, right? So you have the key, you can generate signatures with that key, and then you have a mechanism to broadcast those transactions into different blockchain networks, right? So you have the key, you can sign a transaction, and then you can broadcast it. And MetaMask it does a very good job to provide that functionality, but that functionality in itself has a lot of drawbacks, right? And it's not something that you can expect, the majority of people in the world to use. And if we're talking about things like AI agents, giving an AI agent control of something akin to a MetaMask is very dangerous because the agent can hallucinate, the agent can be prompt injected. There are a lot of things that can happen to the agent once it controls real money that you actually want to make sure that there's some guardrails there. You don't want to give them full control. So while MetaMask does what it does really well, what it does isn't what we actually need in order to create mass adoption or in order to bring agentic operations into our lives and to use crypto as underlying rails for those things.
Beautiful. Okay, so we'll take about 10 minutes left. This wallet thing is really interesting. I want to dive into this because I'm now thinking I want to use Ika to start making experiments. There's the Hurist was there's the X402, I think it was called, this sort of protocol level, like how do we use the internet in the way they thought of back in 1995 or 1996 of how to transact value and getting the 402 error message. And so they built these sort of microtransactions and yet again, but it feels very, I think it's called like astroturfed, where like they try to make it work with a bunch of money and like putting a bunch of things and it doesn't really like catch on. That feels like where the state is right now, basically. And so how can I start to transact? Well, I really like this bridge, the lack of a bridge, because that means that in the access control, actually, those are the best questions. What can I give my agent access over that's a really safe way for me to do a little bit of an experiment to try to figure out how to actually give my agent the ability to transact? What can I do there?
So this is actually there's a company called Human Tech. Funnily enough, they're also building tech for AI agents, not just for humans. But they're building using Ika, and they created something called WAP, Wallet as a Protocol. So today you have things that are wallet as a service. I think the most famous one is Privy. I don't know if you've heard of them. They were acquired by Stripe. A lot of these companies were acquired by larger fintechs because they want access to users, right? Because they're centralized companies. When you create a wallet with them, you basically own the user. Yeah. And so what they're building is the decentralized version of that, wallet as a protocol instead of wallet as a service. And what you can do with wallet as a protocol, they'll have a specific like agentic wallet offering there. And basically what you can do with that is you can have as the user, as the owner, the admin, you can have a backup of the full key, right? So you know that you can always do whatever you want, right? You keep that in very deep cold storage, but you know that no matter what happens with Ika, with your agent, with whatever, you have your full backup. But then what you do is you import that key into a DWallet. And that gives you the network share that Ika controls, and you write a policy for that. And they have like interfaces that are very easy in order to create those policies, like spending policies or maybe whitelisted addresses or protocols that that can be engaged with. So that is enforced by the network, and then the agent gets the user share. So the agent can't do anything by itself; it has to abide by the policy, because if it requests a signature that doesn't pass the policy, then Ika just won't sign. And then Ika also can't sign by itself because, it only has the network share. So even if Ika is somehow compromised, you still have a zero trust guarantee. So as a user, this is kind of the best of all worlds, because you don't need to trust anyone. You always have full control yourself, but you can have autonomous actions being done for you in a way that that there are strict guardrails that can never be, reasoned around or hallucinated around by the AI. And you don't have to trust. So today, in order to do that, you'll have to trust an entity like Coinbase or Privy, right? And give them full control of the wallet. And that is something you don't want to do. So this is the way to do that. And again, they're using Ika's infrastructure in order to create that as a specific product. So you'll actually be able to just connect, plug your agent in. You get, as a user, you get the key, or you input the key, and then the agent gets their share. The policy gets written to a smart contract and is enforced by Ika, and it's just completely hands off from there on.
Yeah, so it's the access control. I'm right after we get off the call, I'm gonna go back to what I was doing right before we got on the call, which is access control for a new server. That I got to set up so that I can, because I learned, or actually one of our AI whisperers, part of our community, he was a fellow non-technical guy who picked it up really quickly and who's an entrepreneur and just knew how to use it. We're going to learn from his mistake, because he made a mistake of getting the server up, and then he got hacked by a crypto guy. A crypto guy went in and hacked his thing to mine crypto. And it's all because he gave root to the server. And then he gave sudo to the parts of the server as well. And so, I learned from that, basically, I just have to lock that shit down, basically, any sort of process. And it was really funny, because here's a perfect example of what I was saying earlier with the agentic stuff, is that I asked it to set up a Docker. And then I started asking, I have a planning agent and I have a coding agent. And so the planning agent told the coding agent to go set up the Docker. And then I have a conversation with the planning agent. I say, what do we need to talk to about security? I'm about to do this thing. How do we get this going? And it said, well, on the Docker, blah, 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 Docker, Docker, Docker. And then I asked it again, did you give root access to this Docker file? And then it said, no, definitely not. No, we haven't done that at all. And then I go and check the coding agent. It definitely gave root access to the Docker, so I would have been setting that up with a total root access into this thing if I had not double checked. You just always got to double check. And
100%. And by the way, I think one of the big things is going to be, like cybersecurity red team agents, right?
Yes.
Because cybersecurity is complicated, and people, even experienced developers who don't have experience in cybersecurity, do a lot of those kind of mistakes, right?
Yes.
But you do have, the industry evolved in a way that it became pretty mature, and you have all these different cybersecurity solutions, and the more the company becomes mature, the more you adopt them. But with AI agents, people are just building things so fast, and no one is looking at cybersecurity. So that's definitely going to be a big thing. But I think a very interesting part of that, connected to Ika, is, we're talking a lot about crypto use cases, right? Custody and interoperability. But I believe that a threshold signature network that can enforce access control on how signatures are generated is relevant for so many things in the world. So the world, people don't know, but the world runs on cryptographic signatures.
Yes.
When you enter a website and you see the little lock, right? That's cryptographic signatures, because it's end-to-end encryption. When you get an update to your smart TV from Samsung, that update is signed by Samsung's key, because otherwise it could be a malicious update and your TV won't install it. There's all these things in the world, and this is called the thing that approves Samsung's approval of the update. It's called the CA, a certificate authority. Right? So certificate authorities also in the internet, right? When you have the HTTPS, the TLS, that is signed by a certificate authority. So when you see this little thing, it's because one of the very few certificate authorities in the world, right? There are very few of them, has signed the certificate that yes, this is actually the website, this is actually the server that owns the NS, right? The domain, right? And they signed that it is actually their website. So now think about having a decentralized certificate authority, right? Right now, today, if someone is somehow able to hack one of the certificate authorities in the world, the whole internet is broken. You will be able to impersonate as any website you want because all the browsers, they all respect that certificate authority signature. So if I am able to somehow get the key of one of those certificate authorities, I can impersonate any website and anything in the world, right? And all the browsers will respect it. Now, imagine a world where you have a decentralized certificate authority. Now, instead of breaking one, I need to break tens, maybe hundreds of different operators in order to be able to impersonate a website, right? So like there's a lot of use cases around cybersecurity, whether it's internally in how you manage access control of agents or of different permissions that you have internally or externally on the internet, and how you push out, updates or things like that, how you maintain open source projects, right? Right now, if you have a maintainer, they have the authority. And if someone is able to hack them, they can impersonate them, and then everyone gets the malicious update to an open source library. What if you have a decentralized certificate authority and not just one maintainer that holds it, right? There's all these things that Ika can solve in the real world because decentralized access control is a huge, huge deal. And if you can remove a single point of failure, it becomes a really significant upgrade to security.
Yeah, decentralized access control. That's the jargon. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was a brilliant interview. How can our listeners find out more about you and more about Ika?
So you can follow Ika on X. It's at Ika, Ika, DOTXYZ. So Ika.xyz spelled out. That's our profile on X. We usually communicate there. My profile on X is D3H3D _. And we're the website is ika.xyz, ika.xyz. And we're going to soon launch another project. This is actually the first time where I'm talking about it publicly, but we're going to launch another project around cryptographic privacy called Encrypt. So that will be at encrypt.xyz. And we haven't really talked about it publicly yet, but we will start talking about it soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Pleasure.